So welcome. This afternoon we are going to talk about discipline versus punishment and working towards those better outcomes in your schools. And Michelle Polzin is here with Jennifer Grenke. And what I'd like to do first is to ask each of you that are here to write in the chat box your name, your position, the district that you work in, and the school building. And if there's more than one person with you, please share that information for each person. So the reason we kind of chose this topic for this time of year is because in February, March, we see a lot of discipline referrals increasing, and it's not just because of where the students are at. You know, it's been a long winter, they're kept inside from recess, but it's also staff as well. Get to the point that, you know, we're kind of frustrated, it's a long winter. So we want to be thinking about that and how that can affect how we discipline the students. We look at the term disciplina, which it comes from the Latin term discipline, and really what this means is to instruct or to teach. So anytime we think of discipline, we want to teach the students the expectations that we want to see in the classroom. This is a very fundamental process that needs to happen for the students, and it needs to be systematic throughout your school district or your school building. And in doing that, we teach the student the expected behaviors. So we let the definition of discipline guide us. We first need to define what it is that we're going to teach. And then we actually model with the students the expectations that we want the students to perform for us, and we practice them in the specific settings. And this is especially important for those children in the elementary school to take it to the context for them so they know this is the behavior, the expectations that we want in this specific setting. And then we monitor and acknowledge those students. So it's that continuous process, that implementation science, where we continuously look at improvement and how we can make things better in our building. And behavior does not just happen. This is something that we need to be cognizant of and think about, that behavior does not occur in a vacuum. There's triggers that are predictable. So we need to look at when there's a student behavior, what happened right away? So what was that antecedent right before the behavior occurred? And then what is the consequence that is maintaining that behavior? So we call these the ABCs of behavior, but it's just that beginning level of understanding behavior is a form of communication. And we want to figure out when that student has a behavior that's inappropriate, how are we maintaining their behavior by giving them the specific consequence they're getting? An example could be if you have a child that struggles with math, and every day in math that student blurts out, talks back, and they're sent down to the office. And maybe that's what that student wants because they're really having a difficult time in math. So we need to look as we're maintaining their behavior by the consequence they're getting by sending them to the office. So here's an example. Using that ABC behavior process, first we note that Charlie usually will shout out during class. And this is usually during the large group discussion that this occurs. And we know this because we've collected some data on Charlie to find out why this behavior is happening and when it's happening and when it is most likely to occur. So we know in advance that during large group discussion, there's a high likelihood that Charlie's going to shout out. So what we need to look at is what maintains this behavior of his. Is it something that he's getting or something that he's getting out of? We need to look at that and those previous consequences to determine what is going to maintain that Charlie's behavior and what can we do to correct it so that we can keep Charlie in the classroom. Always remember, behavior is a form of communication. So when we think about what works for behavior, Research tells us that these practices that are listed on the screen here, they work to help curb those undesirable behaviors. So let's just look at calling on students equitably. So here's a way that we can make a simple checklist to monitor our class and see the responses that we're getting to make it equitable for all. So we want to know, are we targeting all of the students in the classroom? So looking at this checklist, we can see that we may need to target Mary Jones, Charlie Cash, and Frank Fries a little bit more. This can be referenced. We have some documents attached over here on the side in the materials. So you can see there's a document in there that you can reference to get some more examples of how to use these monitoring checklists. And then here are some steps to use when you're correcting students. So there's 8 steps here, but we know as professionals that a lot of these can be condensed into like 3 or 4 steps. The point is that we want to teach the appropriate behavior so that we can respond and the student knows how to act in the current situation. And then here's some key philosophical precepts when correcting students. We don't want to embarrass students. Even if they call attention to themselves by shouting out, we don't want to be that cause of the embarrassment, because sometimes that is what is maintaining their behavior, by escalating that situation. So having that predetermined response, so we know that the student knows there's going to be a meeting or a conference between the two of you privately, possibly after class. Retain that student for 30 seconds. Take some of their time away that they've taken out of the class, but by all means preserve their dignity. We want to remain calm and avoid that frustration that escalates that whole situation. Finally, this tip box, this speaks to that old saying, people won't remember what you've said or how you've said it, but they will remember how you made them feel. Always, always make those students feel respected. Even if their initial behavior was disrespectful, if you respectfully discipline them and correct them and teach them, research has proven that they will come around and that they are going to become respectful to you. It may take time. Remember, in previous trainings we've talked about that once a person has to replace an old behavior, it can take up to 21 times for them to learn a new replacement behavior. So here's an example of a procedural flowchart, and this contains items that we're working on and that have worked in your buildings, and these are from the T-chart, the minors and majors that you've listed out. So you can see that we move from the least adversive the first time over here to more severe, where the student, it goes probably to a major. So moving to the minor behavior, number 2 here, you can see the first time we just give them choices, revisit, the expectations. We use the use of the when and the then practice. Then we move to explicit teaching. So we want those students to understand exactly what is expected of them. And having your expectations posted in your classroom for each type of learning situation is going to help students develop appropriate expectations. So if you're thinking about those large groups in your classroom, small group collaboration time, individual reading time, whatever those are, have these posted and refer to them so that the students can look at them and maybe self-correct, or they can have peers help self-correct. Just looking at posters in the room, I had a science teacher share with me during labs that this worked out really well when he was working with one group and there was another group that was getting off track, and he asked them, he pointed to the sign and said, hey, what are the expectations during lab? And he was able to call them back together. So again, you can see that we list this out for our staff so they can see here's a minor behavior, and that as we see a pattern coming and that they just haven't learned through these processes that we have, that we need to get a little more intensive each time so that we can teach those students the appropriate behavior. And here's another idea. Have students name other students that are demonstrating the expected behavior in the classroom. So if you have little Charlie Cash who's misbehaving and Johnny Jones next to him is behaving, ask Charlie Cash, hey, can you tell me what Johnny is doing correctly or what he's doing appropriately? Another idea is have that student practice the behavior after class, and I had mentioned that in a previous slide, is have that student come in or stay after class for 30 seconds and have them practice what is the appropriate behavior that we need to have in this class. And Michelle, I'm going to turn it over to you now.
Okay, thank you. Are you giving me the screen?
I am. Just a second.
Okay. Okay. I've got a black screen.
I do too. So if you want, I can just forward for you or move the slides for you. Oh, there it came.
Okay, great. Okay, so Jen just covered things that do work, that we have research and evidence that those practices work. We also need to talk about what doesn't work. And this quote about being responsive and how to respond to student behavior, the single most commonly used but least effective method for addressing undesirable behavior is to verbally scold and berate a student. I was just working with some coaches this afternoon, and we were talking about how to correct, how to acknowledge and how to correct students, and somebody else talked about sarcasm and how that can often be misinterpreted by students, and that can do a lot of damage to the relationship. And punishment should never cause a student to feel publicly humiliated or intimidated. And here's just a few examples of some practices that either in the past we used to see a lot more of, one that's kind of still ongoing, the stop and go light. And what I really think people need to ask is the question of, does what we're doing match what it is that our belief system, what our belief system is? So, think about honor level discipline systems or zero tolerance, or those in-school suspension reflection sheets, the stop and go like clipping up, clipping down. Do those practices really match our belief system in terms of building a safe environment where students have that positive culture, that positive climate, where they're able to learn at their highest level? If you think about the last time that you had a situation in a relationship, in an interaction, a social interaction with someone else, and it was negative and upsetting to you, how long did it take you to recover from that interaction? So it can take up to 90 minutes for a student to mentally recover and stop focusing on the negative public humiliation or beratement that happened, where they did not feel dignified. It can take up to 90 minutes for them to recover from that. And so what kind of learning takes place in that 90 minutes when they're still focused on what happened? So something to definitely consider in changing practice. Also, we need to make sure that all of our consequences are very predictable and consistent for students. So first of all, students should know ahead of time when they have behavioral errors that are repeated, that the consequence that's assigned to those misbehaviors or those behavioral errors, they know what those are going to be ahead of time, but it's not going to be some kind of surprise. And the consistency piece, that it doesn't matter if it was in Mr. Smith's class or Mrs. Johnson's class, that they both respond in the same way. We don't have mean teachers and nice teachers. Also, designed to prevent behavior from reoccurring while at the same time reteaching the behavior that we want to see. Fitting the situation. So as Jennifer mentioned earlier, taking a small amount of time from the student that they may have taken from class instruction. So having a student sit for 30 seconds before transferring to their next class, or out to recess or lunch. That's a mildly aversive consequence, and we know that mildly aversive consequences are much more effective than overly harsh ones. We also want to make sure that it's not too lenient. We do want the student to feel uncomfortable. And it's all designed to discourage repeating those problem behaviors. And our emphasis really needs to be on the data that we're collecting. So all in all, within our discipline system, that data piece of what did the student do, what was the misbehavior, what did we do in response to that, and did it have any kind of impact on the student behavior? If it's something that doesn't work, then repeating that is, well, the definition of insanity. It does not make sense to continue the same behavior if it's not working. And then just a note on those office discipline referral forms, that the ODR is the data collection piece. It's not the punishment. And so there have been times when, teachers are on their last wire, or sitting on the wire, that they say something like, "Papa, I'm going to give you an ODR," and that is not the end result. We want teaching to happen. Also, giving those multiple opportunities to respond, like Jennifer was talking about earlier, making sure that it's everybody has an opportunity to respond in an equitable way, allowing for those cultural differences so that students' culture is taken into consideration in terms of how to respond. So if you were to put in the search term, like in Google or in a search engine, multiple opportunities to respond, there are so many different ways that can be built in to the classroom teacher's repertoire, that all students then are able to have some kind of voice in the room, and that encourages engagement, increases engagement. The other thing you want to think about when you see behavior that is unexpected is teachers ask the question, is this behavior wrong, or is it just a cultural mismatch in terms of thinking of how we were brought up and what our perceptions of the world are and what we bring to the table? Is that cultural, or is it a correct way? Or is it just a mismatch? So in some cultures, eye contact when speaking to an adult is considered disrespectful. In some cultures, shaking hands with members of an opposite sex that they do not know well is considered taboo. So really having that understanding of who your students are also helps you determine if this is a cultural mismatch. And we do have some activities designed to help you determine those things. So at this point, what we would like is, we do have a handful of people here, either in the chat box or raise your hand. What have you heard so far that is a new way of thinking when you're thinking about discipline? We'll just watch for hands to come up or comments in the chat box.
Also, I would like to ask if anyone has not entered their name, their district, their position, and the school building they work in the chat box. If they could do that now, we would really appreciate that. And then if you also have anyone who's sitting with you in your room, if you could include them in that chat box notification as well.
Okay, I see that Sue put in the chat box that a new way of thinking is about the ODR just being another way to collect data for record keeping. Yeah. Past practice is when you fill out a sheet of paper that actually is part of the punishment. There was a write-up, you've been written up. And the student doesn't really even have to know that an office discipline referral form was filled out, because it's your consequence system, the continuum of consequences that you have in place that's been explained to students, is really what the focus should be on. And then Susan, we are looking at doing a teacher's academy with our district on being culturally responsive, and she likes the information that we're using. Yesterday I was looking through some videos on, I was just doing a Google search, and I found, it's for a fee though, but they kind of give you a teaser. See if I can quick pull it up for you. What was it?
So Colleen mentioned giving all staff tools to be culturally responsive is necessary. Good idea, Susan.
Oh, I think it was in my Google Chrome. It was a website that had professional development videos, and the series was just so good. But there was also one from Iris out of okay, I am not very smart with Google or with Chrome. Oh, I know what I'll do. I'll just type it in here. I put in culturally responsive teaching, and then I clicked on videos. Yeah, this study.com, culturally responsive teaching, theory, research, and so on, so good. You get to watch about 3.5 minutes of the video, and it was excellent. But also, there was one from IRIS, which is out of, what's the university down there, the college down there? They have a lot of videos. You know the IRIS at Peabody Vanderbilt?
Yes.
They have all these videos, and there was one on culturally responsive and culturally and linguistically diverse videos. And so, yeah, they're in here, and they have actually those staff development modules in here that you can break down. Like here's one right here. This one's on page 8, but there are multiple pages, and you can just walk through all the potential modules here. So the resources on this particular website are really, really good as well. And then, of course, we have all of our culturally responsive materials on our website as well, including within our classroom management modules, which is one of the resources that's listed on our banner that scrolls across. And we actually do have a section that is on, there's a training supplement on implicit bias. And then within the consequences, which is what we were focusing on today within the classroom, if you click on that, it will start up.
Welcome back. This is Module 3.
It has everything from how to track minors to a menu of responses within your continuum. So planned ignoring, how to deliver corrections, non-examples of how to do it, and then how to provide prompts, reteaching, how to do the providing choice, competency the student, and then activities. At the top there are resources for all the activities, and self-reflection checklists that you can use with staff. So if you're going to do some kind of staff development with all staff, there are a number of materials right here on our website that are so well done. I cannot stress for you, I was not involved in the creation of them, so I can say that they were very, very well done. And they're quick and easy to go through, and they're very explicit, so you wouldn't have to do a lot of prep in order to use them. Any other comments? Thanks for the information. So if we don't have any other questions, we can do a wrap up.